Senate file number 1832. Let me see what's going on with the computer here. The sound should have been off. Senate file 1832, Conference Committee. I'm calling it to order. We are excited that you all are here. We're excited for everyone who is gathered around the table. I thought the first thing that we would do is do introductions, and I want to give the first word to the other co-chairs. So let me say that plural. So we'll start with Representative Pinto because he's jobs, and then we'll go to Jen, who is our labor person, and then go to House labor person so they can introduce themselves, and then we'll flank out and I will go through and make sure everyone around the table will have an opportunity to be introduced because we think it's important for the public to know who we are and know how important this great work is that we are going to do together. That's the operative word. All right, together. And with that, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Chair Champion, Mr. President. So glad to be with everybody. I'm Representative Dave Pinto from the southwest part of St. Paul. So this is an unusual conference committee. We've got our the one committee in the House matched up with the two in the Senate. So I'm the co-chair of that combined committee in the House, along with my colleague, Chair Representative Dave Baker, and then very eager to work with you, Chair Champion, and with Chair McEwen, and with everybody on the committee. We were thinking this might be one of the largest conference committees we're thinking, and I'm not sure if there's been a record set. And we have a lot of big issues to address, so we're really glad to have a lot of expertise around the table. Let me think. Yeah, just very much looking forward to working with everybody in this process. We have, as folks are aware, we've got a tie in the House. I know things are close in the Senate as well, and so a lot of really good discussions have gone on, and looking forward to continuing those as we land the plane and enact a two-year state budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, there, Representative Pinto. We'll now go to Senator McEwen, who's the chair of the Senate Labor Division, and we want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself and say anything that she wants to say before we then go to Representative Baker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am State Senator Jen McEwen and the chair of the Senate Labor Committee. I represent Duluth in the Senate. And I'm very pleased to be joining all of you today. We've done a lot of good work over this session, trying to build upon the work that was done in the previous biennium and preserve a lot of important protections for working Minnesotans in particular. So looking forward to all of the work together and some good discussion. Thanks, everybody.
And now Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody again. Dave Baker, a state representative from the Willmar-Candiota County area. I'm a small business guy myself, small hospitality company, and been doing it for a number of years. Really, again, proud to be here today. We have a lot of important work to do here in the next, a couple days or a week or whatever it's going to take to get it done, to both discuss kind of what happened a couple years ago to kind of build on or peel away, however you want to look at it a little bit, how we want to have those conversations. But I'm looking forward to having very good conversations about how to make sure workers in Minnesota are protected, how we stay competitive as a state with other states, and I look forward to working with all my colleagues. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so very much. And now we're going to go to the members of the committee. We'll start on this side, on the Senate side, and then I will have Representative Pinto conduct things for the House side. So with that being said, we'll start on the end with Senator Hochschild.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Grant Hochschild. I'm the state senator from northeastern Minnesota, the largest and most rural district in the state, and I serve as the vice chair of our labor committee.
And next, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Champion. Rich Draheim, senator for kind of the leftover district. I represent 7 counties, starting a little bit northwest of Jordan, all the way down to Iowa. And I am the Republican lead on the Jobs Committee. Thank you.
And just so you know also, before we go to the next person, is that Senator Draheim is also the Senate ranking minority member on the Jobs Committee, and we are excited to have him. Next, we'll go to the queen herself, is none other than Zainab Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Zainab Mohammed. I represent Senate District 63, which means I am Representative Greenman's senator. So 63 is full present, and thank you for sitting me next to Senator Draheim.
And we have one other member who's not with us because she is on another committee, but you will see her come in and out. That's none other than Claire Umu Verbatim, so we are also excited to have her. So now we'll go to Representative Pinto so he can introduce the members, and then we'll go to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and we'll start with Representative Selesnikar. I'm so happy to be serving with all of you as senators on this conference committee, and here's our House team. Representative Selesnikar.
Thank you, Chair, and it's an honor to be on the conference committee for the workforce and labor bill, and look forward to working together with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And then to Vice Chair, we've got our two Vice Chairs sitting next to one another. First, Vice Chair Greenman.
Well, it's very exciting. I'm Representative Emma Greenman. I represent 63B, the South Minneapolis, and actually represent our great state senator. So South Minneapolis is well represented, and we are really focused on leveling the playing field for Minnesota workers and small businesses, looking forward to how we can protect folks, and excited to be here to partner with all of you and do that work this budget cycle.
Thank you, Representative Greenman. And then to Vice Chair Meckland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Shane Meckland, I represent Big Lake, Becker, Clear Lake. Like Chair Baker, I am a small business owner and a residential building contractor, so I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Meckland. Our final House member is just settling in. I didn't mean to call him out, but it turns out this is just a moment. And Representative Frazier, as you get settled in, folks have just been briefly introducing themselves. We've heard from our Senate counterparts, and you could have you say what you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and a perfect time, and appreciate everyone waiting for me. Representative Frazier, District 43A, Crystals, cities of Crystal and New Hope, and looking forward to the conversations here.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Chair Champion.
And I think Representative Frazier believes he's on Senate time, so he could just come in at the time he wanted to. No, we appreciate having him. Thank you for being here. We'll now go to our committee administrators. We'll start with Tom Melton, who can introduce himself, and then we'll go to Travis Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom Melton, I'm the committee administrator for the Jobs Committee. Excited to work with all of you.
Travis Reese, one of the committee administrators for the House Workforce, Labor, and Economic Development, Finance and Policy Committee.
And then we'll go to the labor CAs, and we will start with Fabian Bean.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fabian Bean, Senate Labor Committee Administrator and a constituent of Senator Mohammed's.
And we'll go to Spencer Johnson, who I told the other day that I would not forget his name ever again. So Spencer Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Spencer Johnson, I'm the other House Committee Administrator for the Labor Committee.
And now we'll go to Senate Council. To my right is none other than the great Carolyn Doyle Fontaine. She can introduce herself, and then we'll go to Ann Scholin. Okay, got it. I'll get it right. I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Carolyn Doyle Fontaine. I am Senate Counsel to both the Jobs and the Labor Committee in the Senate.
And Charlene.
Anna Shalene, House Research.
All right, and we'll go to Fiscal. Start with Senate, and then we'll go to House.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Hannah Grunwald-Nollner, and I'm the Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Jobs Committee.
And for the House?
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Ashley Ng. I'm the House Fiscal Analyst for the Jobs and Labor Committee.
Well, again, welcome, thank you. Senators and representatives are nothing without staff and without the great support of all the individuals who are gathered around this table, and those you don't see, because there are those who are working very hard in the back. I know that we have Taylor Tidwell Bennett, who is my committee legislative assistant, and we have others that will be introduced later. So with that being said, next on our agenda is a walkthrough, side-by-sides and spreadsheets. So we'll start with the spreadsheets, and I think our fiscal staff has figured out who's going to go first and what portions that they're going to do, and so I'll turn to Ms. Nollner, who will help lead us in that process, and thank you so very much.
Mr. Chair and committee members, in your packets, you should have 3 spreadsheets, one of which is a cover sheet titled Jobs and Economic Development and Labor Conference Committee Comparison. And then there's a larger document for the jobs portion of this committee, and that's titled Jobs/Workforce and Economic Development. And then you should have one final spreadsheet titled Labor Conference Committee Comparison, representing the labor portions of this bill. So I'll start with quickly explaining the cover sheet. So again, this is titled Jobs and Economic Development and Labor Conference Committee Comparison, has a timestamp of 5/13/2025, 10:50 a.m. in the lower right-hand corner. And this cover sheet basically is showing the totals from both jobs and labor positions for both Senate and House. Senate columns are A through F, and House columns are G through L. And I'll just briefly break down what this shows. So from lines 2 to 13, this is the expenditures by fund in each position. And then on lines 14 through 17, this is the revenues by fund in each position. And the net change is shown on lines 19 through 29. So by each fund, expenditures and revenues taken into consideration. Below this table is looking at the target levels. So for the Senate general fund target, there's a combined total of $10,606,000. And then for the tails in fiscal year 28-29, $5.3 million in the tails for the jobs and labor combined total. For the House, that target is a negative $50 million in 26-27 and $50 million in 28-29. So I can always go into more detail there, but that's just kind of an overview of the cover sheet. Myself and Ms. Ng will walk through both jobs and Senate positions. So beginning with the jobs spreadsheet, I will walk through the Senate position. I'll go through the entire spreadsheet, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Ng to walk through the House position. So this spreadsheet has a change-only document for the jobs portion. Later on in the spreadsheet, there's a detailed version of the spreadsheet that includes base items and more detailed descriptions of things. This is, what I'll walk through is just the change items that appear in both positions. So again, this document shows a summary of the general fund and the workforce development fund on lines 1 through 26, and then detail begins on line 28. And I'll just begin with deed. So we're going to jump down to line 75, which is the first change item on the Senate position. And this is a reduction of $600,000 in fiscal year 26-27 for the host community economic development program, and a reduction of $1 million in fiscal year 28-29. On page 2, beginning on line 90, for the cannabis startup grants, this is representing a change that shows moving this transfer from the appropriation section in the bill to the transfer section of the bill. So it's just showing as a reduction here, but it shows up later in the transfer section. And this is to adhere to updated budget rules. On line 96, for MNSBIR Inc., there's a one-time $1 million appropriation in fiscal year 26-27. On line 102 for the Promise Act grants, one-time funding of $4.5 million in fiscal year 2026. And this is split up between the Minnesota Initiative Foundations and then the Neighborhood Development Center with different regions in North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the 7-county metro. On line 122, for the Neighborhood Development Center, $1 million in one-time funding in 26-27. On line 123, this is another case of moving a transfer from the appropriation section in the bill to the transfer section of the bill, and that's for the Emerging Developer Fund Program. On line 133, for Community and Economic Development Associates, one-time funding of $627,000 in fiscal year 2026. For Enterprise Minnesota, Small Business Growth Acceleration, $500,000 in fiscal year 26-27 in one-time funding. Again, for Enterprise Minnesota, Made in Minnesota program, $500,000 one time. Coalition of Asian American Leaders, $1 million in fiscal year 26-27. And then I'll go down to lines 188 and 189, which represent the Workforce Development Fund funding in this division of deed. So on line 188 for the Asian Economic Development Association, one-time funding of $1 million in fiscal year 26-27. And then for Women Venture, $1 million one time as well. On line 193, this shows a cancellation from the Minnesota Forward Fund account of $14 million in fiscal year 2025. On lines 196 and 197, these are just the transfers that I mentioned earlier. On line 200, for the Minnesota Forward Fund, the $14 million cancellation is being transferred to the general fund in fiscal year 2026. And then moving on to the employment and training programs under deed, beginning on line 235 for Copal, $750,000 one time in fiscal year 26-27. For Minnesota Diversified Industries, $900,000 one time. On lines 247 and 248, which shows up on the next page, this is extending the availability of a fiscal year 2025 appropriation for Hmong American Partnership, and that amount is estimated to be about $1 million. So on page 3, line 250, for All Square, one-time funding of $300,000 in fiscal year 2026. On lines 263 and 264, this is another extended availability for Ramsey County Pathway Program, estimated to be about $396,000. On line 279 for Al Ma'un, $1 million in one-time funding in fiscal year 26-27. And these last two lines here are for Power of People Leadership Institute, extending the availability in 2025, estimated to be about $1.3 million. And then beginning on line 306, these are all one-time appropriations from the Workforce Development Fund in fiscal year 26-27. So I won't repeat myself by saying one time over and over again. I'll just say the amount and the program or organization it's going to. So line 306, Minnesota Diversified Industries, Career Skills, $250,000. Ujamaa Place, $800,000. Hired, $800,000. American Indian Communities, OIC, $1 million. Father Project, Goodwill, Easter Seals, $2 million. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, $500,000. Minnesota Grocers Association, Carts to Careers, $500,000. Hospitality Minnesota Pro Start, $500,000. Clues, $1.4 million. Twin Cities Rise, $1.4 million. Workforce Development, Inc., $550,000. Project for Pride in Living, $1 million. Pillsbury United Communities, $250,000. International Institute, $1.1 million. Minnesota Resiliency Partnership, $400,000. Emerge Community Development, $500,000. Workforce Development, Inc., Bridges to Healthcare, $1 million. Propel Nonprofits, $2 million. Summit Academy OIC, $1.5 million. Better Futures, $600,000. 30,000 Feet, $250,000. Hmong American Partnership, $600,000. Inspire Change Clinic, $100,000. Boulder Options Youth Mentoring Program, $1 million. North Minneapolis Change Starts with Community, $1 million. Inspire MSP, $200,000. Jobs Foundation, $250,000. City of Brooklyn Park Workforce Development Programming, $1 million. Equitable Development Action, $170,000. YMCA of the North, $400,000. Twin Cities Urban League, $400,000. And then I'll jump down to line 375, Abijah's on the backside, $500,000. Latino Economic Development Center, $1 million. Northside Boxing Club, $250,000. Black Women's Wealth Alliance, $1 million. Aspirus Lakeview Hospital, $42,000. West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, $250,000. The Sana Foundation, $1.5 million. Alliance of Boys and Girls Club, $1.5 million. Mind the Gap, $1.5 million. and MICC, $1 million. On page 4, beginning on line 385, City of St. Paul Right Track Youth Internship Program, $500,000. Minnesota STEM Ecosystem, $2.3 million. Minnesota Association of Black Lawyers, $700,000. One Community Alliance, $200,000. Ambassadors of Culture, Hoya Hour United Way of Central Minnesota, $300,000. Rural Cancer Institute, $600,000. Somali American Youth Enrichment Club, $50,000. Mad Dads of Minneapolis, $400,000. Test Preparation Pilot Program, $250,000. And Cairo, $600,000. Moving to line 403, under General Support Services, an increase in operating amount here of $2.274 million in fiscal year 26-27 and $3 million in fiscal year 28-29. There's no changes to the Minnesota Trade Office. Under Vocational Rehab Services, on line 423, Vocational Rehab Program, increase of $2 million in fiscal year 26-27 and $2 million in the tails. No changes to state services for the blind. And then under other, there's some changes to the paid family and medical leave account. So on line 449, this represents a reduction of direct appropriations from the FMBI fund, a total of $45.5 million in reductions in fiscal year 26-27 and $10 million in reductions in fiscal year 28-29. And this is shown here as a comparison to the forecast, since the forecast includes these direct appropriations for the program as originally enacted in the 2023 paid leave bill. The chair's position here on the Senate side is to use the authority provided in Minnesota Statutes Chapter 268B.02 for statutorily administering the program, and this statutory appropriation is shown on line 452 of an amount of $35.5 million in fiscal year 2026. So moving on to Explore Minnesota Tourism, on line 459, there's an increase in operating of $375,000 in fiscal year 26-27 and $502,000 in the tails. On line 471, there's a $1.5 million one-time appropriation for the 2026 Special Olympics U.S. Games. On line 475, there's a $5 million one-time appropriation for the World Junior Hockey Championships. And on the last page here, there's no changes to the remaining items under the jobs jurisdiction. However, I'll point out the revenue line here on line 500 for the transfer from the Minnesota Forward account to the general fund of $14 million in fiscal year 2026. I'll also note the footnote, which is pointing out that there's a provision in the policy section of the Senate position, which increases the unemployment insurance benefit costs paid out of the UI Trust Fund by $14.97 million in fiscal year 2026. And the footnote has some more information about the fiscal note and the assumptions under that fiscal note. The rest of the pages of this spreadsheet are showing the same amount of changes. It just includes base items. So again, I won't walk through the detail, but I'll pass it over to Ms. Ng to walk through the House position.
Okay, so back to the top, Mr. Chair, back to the top of this spreadsheet to go through the House position. The target for the House was a reduction of $50 million each biennium, and also included no workforce development funds, new spending. So just base spending for that. And looking on line 2, the total reduction for the jobs area was $53,896,000 each biennium. And then the spending to create the $50 million reduction is in the labor spreadsheet that I'll cover in a little bit. Jumping down to the change item, the first change item, which is on line 41, there's the $500,000 each biennium to the Department of Children, Youth and Families for our child care improvement grants. Down into deed now. On line 68, there's a reduction of $2,500,000 each biennium from the Greater Minnesota Business Development Public Infrastructure. There's an increase of $750,000 each biennium for the Small Business Assistance Partnership Program. There was a reduction of $1.5 million each biennium from the contaminated site cleanup, and a reduction on line 80 of $16 million each biennium from the Job Creation Fund. Looking on page 2. There's a reduction of $24,740,000 each biennium from the Minnesota Investment Fund. There was a reduction of $2 million each biennium from the Redevelopment Grant Program on line 85. On line 88, there's a reduction of $8,390,000 each biennium from the Job Skills Partnership Program. On line 90, there's a reduction of $2 million each biennium from the Cannabis Startup Grants. On line 91, there's a reduction of $1 million each biennium from the Cannabis Navigate Grants. Jumping down to line 186, there was a reduction of $2.7 million each biennium from the Job Skills Partnership Training Grants, and that's from the Workforce Development Fund. Down to the Employment and Training Programs Division of Deed. On line 201, there's a reduction of $1 million each biennium from the Rural Career Counseling Coordinators. There's an increase on line 207 of $2,138,000 each biennium to the Pathways to Prosperity. There's an increase of $250,000 each biennium to the Support Services Grants. There is an increase on line 210 of $1,500,000 each biennium to the Youth at Work Competitive Grant Program. And there's a reduction of $3 million each biennium from the Cannabis Training Grants. On line 221, there's an appropriation of $500,000 each biennium to online early childhood educator training. On line 222, there is $896,000 each biennium to the Minnesota STEM Ecosystem learning projects. Continuing on to page 3, there is an extension on line 263 of the Ramsey County Pathway Program. On line 299, there's the reduction from the Workforce Development Fund is spent here, an increase of $2,700,000 each biennium to the Pathways Prosperity Program. On line 371 and 372, there's an extension of the appropriation to the Arrowhead Economic Opportunity Agency. Continuing on to page 4, there's a reduction on line 403 of $1,650,000 each biennium from the operating of the General Support Services Division. On line 423, there's an increase of $5 million each biennium to the Vocational Rehabilitation Services Program. On line 424, there was a reduction of $2 million each biennium from the Extended Employment Services. And then on line 425, there is an increase of $2 million each biennium to the employment support for persons with mental illness. Continuing on to Explore Minnesota, there's a reduction of, on line 459, there's a reduction of $1 million each biennium from the operating. And then there's a reduction of $650,000 each biennium from Explore Minnesota Tour Film. That's on line 461. And that concludes the House position of the job spreadsheet. Next, I will move to the labor spreadsheet, and this is a change items only, and I will do both the Senate and the House positions. So I'll start with the Senate and walk through that, and then I'll do the House columns. For the net change for the general fund, for the Senate position, this is column F. There's an increase of spending of $1,357,000 in 25 through 27, and then an increase of $798,000 in 28-29. There's a revenue increase for the construction code fund of $21,329,000 in the upcoming biennium and $21,310,000 in 28-29. There's a reduction from the Family and Medical Benefit Insurance Fund of $366,000 that is covered by the statutory appropriation then. On line 5, there is an increase from the Workers' Compensation Fund of $4,809,000 in 25 through 27, and then an increase of $5,052,000 in 28-29. And then the Workforce Development Fund has some changes, but they end up being neutral. Okay. Down to the labor standards change items. The total change for the labor standards division is a decrease of $391,000. And all the change items in 14 through 25 is really a consolidation on line 15. So there's no riders, there's just an operating amount for the division. Then that's on line 15. Looking down at the workers' compensation division on line 27, there's a $4,078,000 increase in 26-27, and then $4,388,000 in 28-29 for the operating increase. There's a reduction of the ergonomic safety grant program on line 31. There's an increase for the operating of the apprenticeship division on line 34 from the Workforce Development Fund. And there is a reduction of $1 million on line 37 from the Clean Economy Apprenticeship Program. On line 38, there's an increase to the Minnesota Virtual Academy Career Pathway Program of $140,000 in fiscal year 26. And on line 39, there's an appropriation to the Building Strong Communities Incorporated for apprenticeship readiness programs of $240,000 in the upcoming biennium 26-27. There's an increase from the Construction Code and Licensing Division of $1 million in the 26-27 for construction industry mental health initiatives. And then there's the fee adjustment on line 47 from the Construction Code Fund of $4,164,000 in 26-27 and $4,292,000 in 28-29. There's an operating increase from the Workers' Compensation Fund to the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals of $731,000 in fiscal year 26-27 and $664,000 in 28-29. The Bureau of lastly on line 52, there's an operating increase. This is from the general fund of $128,000 in fiscal year 26-27, and then $172,000 in 28-29, as well as the increase for the Public Employment Relations Board of $32,000 in 26-27 and $42,000 in 28-29. Finally, there's the revenue associated with the fee adjustments on the Construction Code Fund on line 58. That's $25,493,000, 26-27, and $25,602,000 in 28-29. And then there's some revenue from the strengthening of mandatory break laws to the general fund of $40,000 in 26-27 and $40,000 in 28-29. So starting with the House position of the labor portion of the bill, the net changes on line 2 is an increase of $3,806,000 in 26-27 and $3,716,000 in 28-29. That comes from the operating increase on line 11. Oh, that's from the workers' compensation fund. That is $4,778,026.27 and $4,388,000 in 28.29. The general fund increase, there's a general fund increase in the labor standards division of $896,000 each biennium, and that is from the worker misclassification enforcement increase and on line 20, and then from the misclassification fraud report appropriation of $326,000 each biennium. Jumping down to the apprenticeship division, there is $3 million each biennium to statewide registered teacher apprenticeship program. And jumping down to line 50, there's an operating increase from the Workers' Compensation Fund to the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals of $731,000 in fiscal year 26-27 and $664,000 in 28-29. And then down to line 59, there's a revenue associated with worker misclassification enforcement of $90,000 in 26-27 and $180,000 in 28-29. And that concludes the spreadsheet walkthrough.
Well, thank you so very much. So, members, do you have any questions about the spreadsheets that you'd like to ask the fiscal staff? And if I don't hear any questions, then we'll go to the side-by-sides for the policy. Anything? Any other questions? All right, then we'll start. Are you starting us off? Ms. Charlene is going to start us off, so thank you so very much.
Hello, Chair and members. So we're going to be walking through the policy side-by-side. It's the very thick one in your packet that says jobs policy at the top. You could also follow along. You should have a copy of the walkthrough document, though yours might be on legal size paper. This is what we're going to be presenting. I'll start with the first half, and then Ms. Doyle-Fontaine will take over. Yep, that one. Starting on page R1 of the side-by-side, Senate Section 1, House Section 1, these are similar provisions that add processing of plants to projects eligible for the Business Development Public Infrastructure Program. The Senate language is slightly different in that it includes a delayed effective date for this section. Also starting on page R1, House Sections 2 and 3, this is House-only language that expands the purposes of the Small Business Assistance Partnerships Grant Program to include revitalization of commercial districts. On page R2, Senate Section 2, House Section 4, these are similar provisions that make technical changes to the Minnesota Expanding Opportunity Account. The only difference is that the Senate language includes a retroactive effective date. On page R2, Senate Section 3, House Section 5, these are identical provisions. They remove federal matching language from the forward fund. On page R2, House Section 6, this is House-only language that allows the Commissioner of Deed to designate someone to serve on the Job Skills Partnership Board in the Commissioner's place. On page R3, House Sections 10 and 11. This is House-only language that expand the Youth at Work grant program to include pre-employment services and mentoring as allowable purposes. On page R3, Senate Section 4, this is Senate-only language that requires Deed to administer a free test and professional licensure pilot program for students and dislocated workers. On page R4, Senate Sections 5 and 6 and House Sections 7 and 8, these are similar provisions that increase the maximum grant amount and give increased project costs for the partnership and pathways programs. The Senate allows them a 30% increase over direct project costs. The House allows only a 15% increase. On page R6, Senate Section 7, House Section 12, these are the same provisions. They allow non-post-secondary degrees to count for workforce outcomes. On page R6, Senate Section 8, this is Senate-only language that creates an account in the Special Revenue Fund for the Emerging Entrepreneur Program. It also appropriates money in the account to Deed. On page R7, Senate Section 9, House Section 20. These are the same provision and clarify which year's parking revenue is reported to deed. On page R7, Senate Section 10 is Senate-only language. It lowers the minimum loan amount for the Community Wealth Building Program from $50,000 to $10,000. On page R8, Senate Section 11, House Section 1, these are similar provisions that make technical corrections to the 2023 appropriations to the Minnesota Expanding Opportunity Fund and the promise grants. There are differences, however, in the wording and effective dates between the two bodies. Moving all the way to page R27, Senate Section 12, House Section 3. These are similar provisions that extend the availability of a 2023 appropriation to the Minnesota Forward Fund. The Senate extends the appropriation until the end of fiscal year 2030. The House keeps the money available until spent. On page R29, House Section 2, this is House-only language that extends the 2023 appropriations to Ramsey County and Youth Prize and removes Kajog as a subgrantee. On page R52, House Section 4, this is House-only language that keeps a 2023 appropriation to the City of Minneapolis available and removes obsolete language about a grant payment deadline. Page R53, House Section 5, this is House-only language that modifies a 2024 appropriation to the Arrowhead Opportunity Agency to allow a capital project with the money. Page R62, House Section 6, this is House-only provision, and it removes Kajog as a guarantee in a 2024 appropriation. On page R63, Senate Section 13. This is Senate-only language that provides objectives and reporting requirements so the change starts with community program. Page R63, Senate Section 14 is Senate-only language that modifies an appropriation to ProStart in the 2023 Jobs Omnibus. Page R63, Senate Section 15, again, Senate-only language that requires DEED to reissue an RFP and provide technical assistance to businesses eligible for relocation grants under a 2024 appropriation. On page R63, Senate Section 16, this is Senate-only language that directs the revisor to change the term Small Business Growth Acceleration Program to Made in Minnesota Program throughout Minnesota statutes. And on R64, House Section 21, this is House-only language that repeals 2 expensive mandatory reports of limited usefulness. Over to Ms. Doyle-Fontaine.
Thank you, Ms. Jolene and Mr. Chair and members. I will start then on page R64. This is Senate Sections 1 to 5 and House Sections 13 to 17. These are identical provisions that update Explore Minnesota's mission language to be in line with duties that were previously signed by the legislature. On R67, Senate Sections 1 and 2, this is Senate-only language that modifies the CAN Startup Loan Program by increasing the maximum state contributions to a loan and making other administrative clarifications. On R68, again, Senate-only language, Sections 1 to 6. These sections provide administrative clarifications for administration of the Promise Act loan and grant programs. On R72, Senate Section 1, House Section 9, these sections are different, and I will go through the differences. The Senate language includes the county labor force participation rates for what must be considered before using workforce development funds, and then the House makes workforce development funds available to the Job Skills Partnership Board on September 1st each year rather than March 1 of each year. On R72, Senate Sections 2 to 3, House Sections 18 to 19, these provisions are the same. They make technical changes to how blind vending locations are described in statute. On R74, Senate Section 4, this is Senate only. This section modifies the definition of available for suitable employment to allow an applicant to conduct a remote work search without being disqualified from getting unemployment benefits. On R75, Senate Section 5, this is Senate-only language. This raises the penalty percentage from 50% to 100% of the impacted unemployment benefit amounts overpaid or not paid. On R76, Senate Section 6, this is Senate-only language that provides for an additional 26 weeks of unemployment benefits for certain applicants related to a layoff or layoffs from the iron ore mining industry. The remainder of this walkthrough will be all labor provisions. I just wanted to point that out, that we're moving on from the economic development provisions. So on R77, Senate Section 1, House Section 1, these are the same. This provision allows the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to apply in district court for a temporary restraining order enjoining violations of statutes and rules over which the Commissioner has compliance order authority. On R77, House Sections 2 to 3, this is House-only language to narrow the definition of nursing home, to clarify that veterans and tribal homes are not included in the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board. On R78, House-only language, Sections 4 to 7, define terms and protections for state workers who report fraud or misuse of public funds. On R79, House Section 8, House-only language, allows limited duration covenants not to compete for workers over a particular level of compensation under certain circumstances. On R80, another House-only provision, Section 9 of the House language, that corrects the name of an accrediting body. On R82, I'm going to go through a number of sections that are many pages. However, I'm just going to kind of do a brief overview. If you want to do the deep dive, you can get into the my summary that goes through each provision. But I just wanted to note that if you need the more detail. On page R82, this is Senate-only language, sections 2 to 8, and then on R88, sections 11 to 46. These sections make policy and technical changes to manufactured housing provisions, and then also provide for certain labor and industry fee increases, including for plan review and inspections. On R86, Section 9 and Senate Section 9 and House Section 12. These are the same in both bodies. They add Class 4 electrical circuits and systems and make other technical changes related to National Electrical Code updates. On R92, a House-only provision, House Section 14. This exempts well contractors regulated by the Minnesota Department of Health from the Department of Labor and Industry plan and specification reviews and inspections. On R111, Senate-only language, Senate Sections 1 to 5. These sections specify the time amounts required for employee rest and meal breaks. This also provides for remedies for the break violations, and then allows the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to assess a penalty of up to $1,000 per employee per day. Also on R111, these are different sections, Senate Section 6 and House Section 15. Both these Senate and House provisions call for a misclassification fraud impact analysis to be coordinated between the Department of Labor and Industry, Department of Revenue, and Department of Employment and Economic Development. The Senate language is permissive to allow the analysis, and then the House requires the report and every 2 years, and then provides the due dates and required elements of the report. On R113, Senate Sections 1 to 2 and House Sections 10 to 11, these are the same. These are the provisions that modify a couple of items related to underground telecommunications installers with regard to installation and training requirements for those individuals. And that concludes our walkthrough of the policy provisions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you to Senate Council from the House and Senate for going through that walkthrough. Any questions from the committee on the walkthrough, policy walkthrough? Any questions that you'd like to have answered? All right, seeing that we have a very studious bunch who's just considering everything and thinking about everything. Today was really designed as an opportunity for us to get together for the first time, introduce ourselves to each other, go through the spreadsheet, and then also go through the walkthrough of the policy sections around each bill. So our next steps, if there's nothing else for us to do today, our next step is for the House is going to have the gavel, but I'm thinking that we probably won't get together until we get targets. Is that what you're thinking, or what are you all thinking? Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were planning, I think the plan is to have a meeting tomorrow. We're still figuring out exactly what. Definitely, I will say I was reflecting as our phenomenal staff was walking through the spreadsheets that, yeah, there's obviously significant fiscal difference between these bills, I will say driven a lot by the extremely different targets that we received. So as our leadership gives us a joint target, however that happens, that's going to drive a lot. It does occur to me, though, that there's quite a lot of policy overlap, and there may be some things to discuss. So I guess the plan is to meet tomorrow, same place, same time. Still assessing exactly what that would be. I want to consult with you, Mr. Chair, with my co-chair, with Chair McEwen on the labor side. I'll say this is a little bit dangerous to be saying in this public setting, but I'll say this: I was looking at the walkthrough. There may be some same provisions, maybe some similar provisions we can at least discuss. I don't know if we would actually be adopting them, but just that's something for us to chat about a little bit. But would expect we'll have some kind of meeting tomorrow at least.
And the time for that meeting?
And the time is this same time, 1 p.m. And I believe we've got the same location. I'm not sure if my co-chair has anything that he wants to add at all, but any of that, and I'll defer to you, Chair Champion, obviously to call him if you want to, but.
Representative Baker, and then we'll go to Senator McEwen if she has anything that she wants to say. And I think we have a question down there.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairs, both of you. I agree. I think that we should meet tomorrow. I think, again, knowing that we just don't have our targets yet delivered to us, I think we should just keep pounding away on the policy provisions that we can get to. I think just from a time management, we have not many days left. I think we just need to stay with that as much as we can. I know that we'll be doing our due diligence on some of the other divisions and the differences, I guess, on policy items, but looking forward to continue to work where we can that don't require the dollar bill right now. So let's maybe focus on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator McEwen, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think you've all said it all. I look forward to continuing these discussions and getting as much work done as we can under the circumstances.
Senator Draheim, I think you had a question down there, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I just was going to point out to the Senate members that we have Health and Human Service up on the floor at 11, and I don't think we'll be done by 1. So I would recommend that we push it back, and I want to be here. I love talking policy, but I might have an amendment or two for the bill tomorrow.
Of course, Senator Draheim, you have an amendment or two. That is true. The only way that we can meet during a conference committee is if we get permission from the Senate pursuant to Rule 12.5. I know that, which doesn't excuse you from voting, just means that you would vote remotely. But if you all can give some consideration to maybe this meeting later, because it's going to be a slightly longer day for us, and I'm certain that some of the folks who are sitting at this table would also like to make sure that they can be fully engaged. Anything around that, Representative Pinto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think we picked the time just because this was the time we'd been given by the Senate to use the room. So I think we will very much defer to our Senate colleagues as to what time works for you to use your beautiful office building here, and then we would meet whenever the time allows, and would call a meeting for then. So defer to you.
Senator Draheim, do you have a sense of what time you would like to shoot for?
I wish, Chair. I wish I would have a crystal ball that would tell me, but I think 3 o'clock would be more appropriate than 1 o'clock, even though I would love to be done earlier.
So can we, Representative Pinto, can we say 3 o'clock, but if we get done earlier, then there's always that opportunity for us to still gather?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and so we'll I gather we have this space, and so folks will just be aware that this is a very fluid time of session, of course. But I think it sounds like we'll be aiming for 3 p.m. And if it turns out we adjust that a bit, folks will understand that. But yeah, we certainly want to make sure things work for you all.
Any other questions or concerns before we leave? With nothing else being stated, the committee is adjourned.